I am so honoured to have Lael Stone with me today.
It actually feels empowering for us to be angry, whereas feeling the sadness feels very vulnerable.
She's dedicated her life to helping parents and educators understand how childhood experiences shape who we become.
I'll come home and I'll pick on one of my siblings so I can find my power again. It makes a lot of sense, right? Like kids will save up their feelings and be like, hey, I can take it all out on you.
And how we can raise compassionate, resilient, emotionally aware humans.
I mean, we could just substitute children for adults in this conversation here, right? Think about it. This is what we do as adults.
We dig into the truth about conscious parenting, attachment, repair, resilience.
You know, we see that our kids are an extension of us, but they are not responsible for our emotional well-being.
Now let's give a warm welcome to Lael Stone. Wow, Keshia, how great is the quality of your new podcast, Return to Wisdom? Oh, mate, I know. I have been recording at Byron Bay's premium content and podcast recording studio, Pod Byron. They are epic. It's new, it's fresh, it's legit, as you can see. If you want to upskill your brand, if you want to create a course online, this is the place to do it. Jump on at podbyron.com. And be sure to check the show notes for a sneaky little discount on your first session. Pod Byron is where it's at. You. Welcome everyone to Return to Wisdom. I am so delighted to say that I have Lael again. I don't know if I can say again because it's a new platform, but it is again. So I'm going to say again. In the studio, and I'm so excited because I did just recently, and by recently, like everyone knows, it could have been months ago, put up on my social media that I felt like I was failing as a parent and asked for people to send through their recommendations, and guess who came through multiple times? So, Lael, it is so good to have you back. Welcome.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here.
I guess for anyone who is new here, and I do have a few new listeners, could you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Okay. These days I say I'm a speaker. I'm an author, so I travel around Australia talking about parenting, emotional awareness, connection, trauma, all those kind of things. Talk to parents, educators, corporate settings. I'm an author. My second book just came out called Own Your Story. I have been a parenting educator for a long time. Before that, I worked in birth as a childbirth educator and a doula. My work, I created a school. So I have co-created a school called Woodland Primary down in Victoria, which is a farm school, play-based learning, all around emotional awareness and intelligence for children. I'm a mum to 3 big humans who are kind of adults now, which is pretty beautiful, but they're all still living at home. And I run lots of different online courses and stuff for people who really want to come home to themselves or really kind of want to do their deep inner work. So a lot of my work is just working with adults these days, helping them understand themselves so they can either be better partners, better parents, or just, live a more happy, fulfilled life.
And you're so great at it. I was actually in preparation for this interview listening to some of your previous interviews, and I'm like, does Lael Stone ever say anything that isn't potent? like does she ever say anything that doesn't hit and then give chills?
Thank you. You might want to ask my husband that. He'll be like, yeah, there's plenty.
You just save it all for these interviews and just nail on the head every single time.
Thank you.
So let's get into it. On the bettering ourselves as people so we can better show up for our little people. I do a lot of reflection on my own childhood. And when I do, and also I listen to other people speak about their own childhoods or, other educators in the space who are like, oh, if a child experiences this, this, and this, like this could lead to these behaviors later in life. And, and the examples go on and on and on. Whenever I listen to that, I'm like, rather than looking at my own situation, I put it back to, what have I done to my children? Like what kind of experiences are they having with me as their mother that is then going to show up later in life for them and cause A, B, C? What are they going to turn around and say, Mum, do you remember the time that you did this? And then now, because of that, it's completely reshaped my whole entire relationship, the way I parent. I can't do A, B, and C in my career, whatever it is. And I am freaking out. So
Yeah.
it makes me wonder.
Let's take a whole lot of that pressure off, okay?
Well, look, I'm an aspiring adult, and and as an aspiring adult, I would really like to know how do we raise our children so that this isn't what they're going to experience.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's firstly just come back to your kids are going to have stuff, right? Because we're human. We're having a human experience here. There is no foolproof, perfect childhood that means you raise a child into adulthood and they don't have baggage or things they have to work with, because we're human and we learn by bumping up against stuff. We learn by being in relationship with people. We learn when things don't go the way we want, when, we fail at something, when we get our heart broken. Like life, the goal is not just to be happy, because I don't think happy is the right goal. I think what's really important to come back to is that we are all beautifully imperfect. And you could do all the things right in whatever way you think right is, which could be just only serving them home-cooked organic food, and they're only allowed to play with certain things, and they don't have screens or sugar, and they run barefoot on the earth, and all these beautiful things which we know are really great, right? I'm not saying that any of those things are wrong. You can do all the things. You can work with your staff. You can try and have a really healthy relationship. Your kids are still going to have things they're going to bump up against because they're human. I guess the goal is to give them the tools to navigate whatever they bump up with. And I may have shared this with you before. I think early on in my parenting, I was really like, okay, if I get this right, I'll listen to all their feelings, I'll play, I'll be calm, I'll do all the stuff, then, they won't have any baggage. And then when they got to being teenagers and their stuff kind of popped up, I remember just thinking, no, you're not meant to have stuff. I've done everything right. That's not okay. And I remember just one point, my daughter was really anxious about something, and I was like, you can't have anxiety because I've done all the things. I've listened to all your feelings and I've played all the games. And then I was like, yeah, she's a human and, she's going to have experiences at school, and she's going to have experiences going through COVID, and she's going to have experiences with friends. And really, she's a human that's going to have to feel stuff. And my job is to be there when stuff is hard and go, hey, how's that feel for you? Or to give her tools to be able to navigate the things that are tricky. So I think the first thing we're going to do is take the pressure off, that there's no perfect. And yes, we know that there's things that are going to help our kids feel better. We know that if they're securely attached, so they don't, they can really rest in our love, they don't have to work for our love. If we don't use punishments, that's kind of can feel better for our kids. They sometimes don't carry a shame story that goes with them. Again, there's a lot of things we can do that we know are going to help our kids have a strong foundation to set up for life. But I think we have to take away any pressure that we're going to get it perfect. And I think the other thing that I have learned over all these years is we are really good at beating ourselves up as parents, and there's times where we do something and we think, oh gosh, that's going to be a trauma. That's therapy right there, right? And yet what I have found with my adult kids is the things that I thought I did badly and screwed up, they were like, oh yeah, that was nothing. And then they'll bring up something that was just not even a thing. And they're like, but that, when you did that, and I'm like, what do you mean? That wasn't even bad. And that's what they hang on to. So I think the thing is we can't get it right, or, there is no right or wrong. We're doing the best that we can. And I guess if we pull back even further than that, I have learned to trust that my children's journey is their journey. I've learned to trust that they chose myself and Mike, my husband, as their parents. We come with all our own story, our own baggage, and we are doing the best we can to work through our stuff. And however they interpret that, whatever is their destiny in the world, then they're going to carry that forward. And you would know this with having more than one child. I have 3 kids. They are 3 completely different humans. They are 3 humans that have got their own kind of path and story that they're working through. And we have raised them in that same house. And so I always just look back at, I have to trust that their journey is their journey. And yes, we want to do the best we can with what we've got. But I also think we have to put down any pressure of that we're gonna mess it up. And for me, the biggest thing has come back to this time and time again. How do I give them the tools and the imprints to lean into their stories, to know that they're powerful and that they can work through them? That to me is what we want to pass on to them. That they know they have skills, tools, resources, and support, that when things are hard, they can navigate it.
Okay, so basically we just need to accept that there is going to be some amount of unmet needs and wounding where we had no idea that was going to take place.
Yeah, totally. And I think also too, like we can have very high expectations of how we want to parent. And I think what I guess I've learned too is that at the end of the day, if a child feels deeply seen and they feel that they're enough just by being them, then we're doing an amazing job. So they're going to have stories and imprints no matter what we do. And sometimes the way we behave as a parent is so unconscious, we don't even realize we're doing it. Then they carry something of that forward. So I think the thing is we have to put down any troubleshooting that goes, how do I make this okay? We have to expect they're going to have stuff. And what we want to do is equip them with the tools to be able to navigate it.
Does resilience fall into that category? Like being able
sure.
Amazing. Can we go into that?
Yeah. So resilience, I think, for a long time, I often talk about resilience in this way. I think particularly here in Australia, I think what we thought resilience is our ability to, get through something hard and then just kind of suck it up and power on through, right? I think that's what's been rewarded in our culture for a long time. We reward grit and look how strong they are. We reward stoicism in our culture. And I think then we labeled that as resilience, right? Look how resilient they are. But actually, having been in this space for a while, what I've begun to see is that's actually not resilience. That's usually just repression. I'm just not going to deal with what happened, so I'm going to disassociate or I'm going to push it down deep and then I'll just power on through. When we look at what resilience is our ability to navigate something hard, feel the feelings surrounding that thing that is tricky, ask for support if we need, and then be able to integrate it to then step forward. So for me, I think the thing is, particularly when it comes to parenting, our job is to keep our kids safe, right? We absolutely have to keep them safe physically, emotionally, but it is not to get in the way or fix when something tricky comes along, whether that's they didn't get picked in the basketball team or whether a friend isn't speaking to them. We want to be able to sit beside them and go, that is really hard. How are you feeling? Tell me more. Let it all out. But our job is not to jump in and fix it or to make sure that they never have anything tricky go on, because we learn through adversity. We learn through those times where things feel really hard, it feels unfair. And what we develop then is this muscle or this ability to feel the feeling, sit in it, transform it, and then be able to move forward. And I think if we look at generations, our parents were pretty good at being resilient, which means, and again, using resilience in the word of just shove it all down, like don't talk about it. And our grandparents were even better than that because there wasn't the support, there wasn't the conversations, there wasn't the resources to be able to process the war or whatever's going on. So they just had to get on with it, right? And be strong and tough. And then our parents kind of learned that. And so then they kind of carry that forward. And then our generation of where we are as we're parents, we are learning that there's a whole lot more that we can feel, that there is support out there, there's tools that we can access. And so what I think we are doing is we're going, hey, it doesn't feel good to be told just to push those feelings down and power on. we're needing to actually feel them. And then our children are like, oh, okay, this is how we experiment, right? We are experimenting with our kids, figuring out what it is to listen to their feelings, what it is to help them process some of the big stuff so that they can develop, actually, to me, a true muscle of resilience. So I think, it's interesting when we look at the generations. None of them were wrong. They were just doing what they needed to do at the time to survive. But I think where we have kind of overcorrected a bit as this generation of parents is we've moved into, I don't want my kids to do anything hard. And I don't, want it to be easier for them. But actually, risk and, having hard things happen is not a bad thing at all. Again, I really believe that we just want to make sure that we give our kids tools to know how to process that, or know that there's a safe place to land, which is with us, to be able to integrate whatever's going on.
Could we go through a few examples at different ages of what that looks like? Because, early in my parenting journey, my motherhood journey, I found aware parenting and listened to the soothing tones of your voice and Marianne. And I've spoken about that in my previous podcast. But I certainly did a lot of the listening to feelings and making sure that there was space for that as well. And it was so beautiful because it was – my first child was like a unicorn, like hardly ever cried, and also we never let her cry. Like, so even if she fell over and like grazed her knee, we'd be like, oh my God, look, there's a butterfly over there. Would you like a dummy? Here's some food. Here's some boob. Like, it would not. And then our second child came along, and he, from the moment he was born to about 4 months old, didn't stop crying. There was nothing we could do to soothe that. So it was such a wonderful thing to learn that actually crying's a really normal thing. I mean, as much as he cried, touch and go, but there was a lot of emotional stuff there. And so that's, where I learned it and where I brought it in. And I thought I was so on the edge of like the new and best way of parenting. I was doing aware parenting and gentle parenting, and little did I know that everyone else was also doing this. This was adopted by many parents. And now there are, 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds who are throwing the same kind of temper tantrums that, like, I think for a 3-year-old, you would hold the space for and be like, oh, honey, please, like, tell me your feelings. But then at like 8, when you're like, oh, honey, tell me your feelings, and you have an 8-year-old like throwing fists, it's like a different parenting situation. So when we're dealing with age-appropriate resilience and gentle parenting, like where could we go through the ages of that?
Okay. All right. So let's look at, again, when our kids are little, they're going to not, someone's going to take a toy off them, or they're not going to get to have a go on the swing. And what we could do is we could jump in and make the other child share. We could tell the other child to get off the swing so they can have a go. We can make it all right for them. And in that moment, again, we need to have context of these situations, but we're probably not doing our child a favor, because actually what resilience would be in that moment is it's really hard to wait, isn't it? It's hard to wait for your turn, and I'm here to help you wait, right? And they're learning about this beautiful muscle of waiting, of things not being the way they want them to be, all that kind of stuff, right? So that to me would be an example of how we teach our kids to sit in the hard stuff for a bit, and we're with them while we're doing it. Whereas if we just give in to their screaming, that's not fair, I want to, we coerce another child to give it to them, all that kind of stuff, then maybe the messaging we're teaching them is you just get upset and then we'll give you whatever we want, right? Which again doesn't necessarily serve anybody in that situation, right? Because that's not how the world works. So that could be how it might look for a 3 or a 4-year-old. For a 6-year-old, there's a lot of resilience that happens just by going to school every day. If kids go to school and mainstream systems, and sometimes that they have to kind of hold it together all day. Sometimes they don't get chosen. Sometimes their friends don't play with them. That it can can be really tricky stuff. And a lot of times in our school systems, kids just kind of mask that or they shut it down, and then they might bring it home to us. And ideally, we can hold a space for them to offload how it felt not being picked in the team, or that, Charlie didn't play with you today and that must have felt tricky. And we create the space for them to process how they feel about it. And then after they've expressed it, maybe we have some conversations of what could you do different tomorrow, or what did that make you feel, and what do you need to say, and all those kind of things. So that could be a way of developing that muscle of resilience there. I mean, sport is a beautiful thing to help kids develop resilience too, especially team sports, So when we're playing basketball together, or we're, whatever, we're playing soccer or whatever it is, and sometimes we don't get picked in the team and that feels really painful. Sometimes we don't get to start, and we have to sit on the bench for a while. And again, in those moments, kids can be upset. It's really normal to feel that's not fair and I'm upset. And again, what we want is we want the children to experience and express their feelings. Yes, let it out. It feels unfair that you didn't get picked in the team. But going and tipping the chair over and throwing all the balls at your coach and all that kind of stuff is not going to be helpful, right? That is going to be a big expression or outburst of feelings that don't feel okay. We want to be able to teach our kids, at 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, you're allowed to feel upset, but then we have a choice about what we do with that. So, we can feel disappointed, we can feel upset, we can express it. And then what maybe is that teaching us? Maybe we need to train a bit harder so we can be on the team. Maybe we need to ask our coach, what can we do better to do it? They're all those beautiful examples of things where we can, guide and teach our children. We can help them be in the upset of this does not feel good, does it? Right? And what is the beauty? What is this teaching us here? Right? Do we have to work harder? Do we have to train a bit more? Sometimes things just don't feel fair. And then what do we do with that? Do we find other people that feel more aligned with us? All those kind of things are beautiful teaching moments within it. I think the thing too, just coming back to what you're saying, if a 9-year-old's, throwing punches and angry and upset, what I would be looking at, and again, we need to know more context and know about a family, but when we have older kids that have a lot of feelings and emotions, my thing is often, okay, what are we looking at here that what might be going on? And there can be many different things going on. It could be a child that's super, super highly sensitive, right? And they're in a system, or they're around things that are too stimulating for them, or perhaps their needs are not getting met. And then all of a sudden one thing tips them over the edge. So we have to have a look at, what is this child who's maybe losing it at 8 or 9? What has their day been like? What's going on for them? How's their body? How grounded are they? Have they had enough to eat? Like, where's their nervous system? I think there's a lot that we can look at within all of that. I think we can also look at, what have they learned in their family of origin? Have they learned that to get their own way, they just get angry and upset, and then parents just give in because it's just easier? So have they not had healthy boundaries, and maybe that's how they're expressing it? I mean, I think the thing to be very aware of is, listening to feelings is beautiful, but boundaries are also so important. Like, our kids need to hear no, and we need to be able to set a really solid, calm no, and then hold space for what's there. So I think it's tricky. Sometimes we've got neurodiverse kids whose sensitivities are really heightened, right? And so then they have a lot more feelings because they can't cope with situations that other children might be totally fine for them. So I think there is just this big, beautiful, broad spectrum that we all sit on, that all kids are in. And I think sometimes we have to look at a few different factors as to why kids are behaving the way that they actually do. Again, I come back to, for any child that's upset, doesn't matter how old they are, whether it's a teenager or whatever. I mean, every child ideally wants to be met with a compassionate adult that says, this sounds really hard and I can see you're in pain and I'm here and I can sit in it with you. I mean, I think that that's what all humans deserve, is someone to say, hey, this is big. But then also, as that calm, anchored adult, we, I think, have a job to be able to teach or guide, what do we do next? It's not okay to go smash someone's window or to punch someone, right? But you're allowed to be angry, but, we don't project that anger onto other people. What are things that we can do with this anger, or what's sitting behind this anger here? And I think for me, I guess where I see one of the biggest challenges in parenting at the moment is we want to be gentle with our kids. We want to bring this emotional awareness to them, but we wobble when it comes to boundaries and being able to hold a really safe place for anger and those big feelings and emotions. And I think the reason why we struggle with it is because we're not comfortable with it in ourselves. Because most of us grew up in environments where we weren't able to express ourselves in healthy ways. Most of us do not have a healthy relationship with anger. So we either shut it down as quickly as we can, or we just get angry and we power over them, or we turn away. And so I think, again, it comes back to that doing our own inner work to be able to feel really comfortable in a storm with a child. What they're looking for is, can you meet me here? Can you hold this for me? And when they sense that somebody can, then what we can do is we can meet them in that fire, and then we help to guide them to whatever hurt or whatever's going on for them. And then we're able after that to be like, how could we do this differently next time? Or, what could we do with this disappointment? Or those kind of things we can do to help to help guide them. I mean, it really is about guiding our children to be healthy humans.
I have something that popped into mind just then, because I mean, as you know, I have 5 children and they are extremely physical with each other, but out in the real world they are exemplary humans. Is that the way to say it?
It made sense to me.
Yeah, great. That's all I need. Yeah, so when they're out in the world, I often get comments at how well behaved they are. And I'm like, I know it's nice when we're out here. I do a lot of parenting out in the world because it makes it a bit easier. But at home, the in-house fighting can be quite severe. My 10-year-old definitely feels like she needs to punish her younger siblings, mainly her brothers, who sometimes do or do not provoke her to those points. And I was wondering, within the frame of that example, I know that a lot of parents, like, that's the tipping point. Like, when your kids are fighting, like that's the point where parents generally do things that they then go, damn, I wasn't my best self in that situation. So can we talk about, like, break down sibling rivalry in that sense and how we can handle it as aspiring adults?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I want to say is it's so triggering when your kids fight. So your reaction and responses, if you're yelling or just losing it, is pretty normal. Like, I really just want to acknowledge, like, there's nothing that can push your buttons more than when your kids, screaming at each other, or that's not fair, or they're laying into each other. It's big, right? So the reactions that we have as adults, I just want to firstly say, are they human reactions? It's understandable. We often get triggered into our own fight or flight response when that's going on. Now, so the first place I always start with is that, most of parenting, particularly when we get triggered, there is sometimes it's just about because we're exhausted and we haven't got our needs met, and sometimes because we need a break. But sometimes when we get really triggered, it's because it's tapping into our own childhoods. And if you grew up in an environment where you used to fight with your brothers or sisters a lot, where perhaps you used to get hurt and no one protected you, like, sometimes those stories are going to turn up when our kids fight. So the first thing that I always say to parents when we're talking about siblings is, what comes up for you when your kids are fighting? Do you feel like you can hold your calm? Do you just move into this alarm? I have to stop it, have to shut it down. Do I move to defend the younger one? Like, what goes on for you? Because a lot of the time we will be tapped into our own childhood places where perhaps we weren't, met or cared for or protected in the way that we need to. So I think that's a really good thing, just firstly to observe. The second thing I think when we're looking at siblings is, siblings are relationships are such a powerful way for children to learn about the world. It's how we learn about negotiation. It's how we learn about letting our voice be heard. It's how we learn about saying no. There's, siblings, we learn a lot through these sibling relationships. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. But what I always think about is that kids, and I come back to that whole analogy I've talked about kids being in balance and out of balance. When a child is feeling good in their body, when they're in balance, they are more likely to be kind to their sibling. They're more likely to help them. They're more likely to be generous with their toys. We've always got to come back to, where is the child in this moment? So if we have, like, say, 5 kids, right? And
just as an example.
There's one. Just as an example. let's just talk about this. And we have one of those kids that is always the one picking fights, right? So, and if that child is always coming into, the others might be playing nicely and then they come in and kind of blow it up, then what we're looking at is, okay, what is the need of that child in that moment, the one that's kind of bringing the chaos or blowing things up? And if we were to kind of scan them and kind of tune into their body, like where's their nervous system? How are they feeling? Are they not feeling seen at the moment? Are they carrying a whole lot of stress and pressures? Have they been at school or kinder all day and then they've come home and they just are trying to offload all those feelings that are sitting there? So I know there's a really good way for me to, not feel so disempowered because I've had a day at school where I've been told what to do all day. I'll come home and I'll pick on one of my siblings so I can find my power again. It makes a lot of sense, right? Like kids will save up their feelings and be like, hey, I can take it all out on you, because children don't feel good being out of balance. Like, I explain it like they're walking around with this giant backpack full of feelings. It's heavy. They don't want it. They want to get rid of these feelings. And because they are still learning how to express themselves, because they are still learning how to process their feelings, one of the easiest ways for them to do it is to turn towards a sibling and be like, hey, you hold all my baggage, right? And I'm going to do this by making you wrong, by you took my teddy, you took my jumper, like whatever it is. And I get to get angry. I get to be right in my anger. I get to power over you. So I feel better. I mean, we could just substitute children for adults in this conversation here, right? Think about it. This is what we do as adults. We just be like, I'm feeling discombobulated and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to come home and I'm going to make you wrong because you didn't fold the laundry in the way I wanted, or you didn't pick up the kids, or you didn't pack the dishwasher, or you didn't get the groceries, or whatever. And we are looking to discharge our feelings. And so here we go. You are a safe person for me to do it with. That could be our partner, it could be one of our kids, all those kind of things. Nobody wants to do that. We don't. And yet we are adults and we do it all the time. So if we come back to children again, when we are seeing that there's kids, there's siblings, fighting's going on, really the first thing we want to be aware of is like, well, who's bringing the energy to it? So which child is doing that? It might be both of them. And what is the need there? So sometimes the need is I'm trying to discharge the anger or the big feelings, the powerlessness that's sitting in my system. So it's our job in that moment as the adult to come in, and often when my kids would fight, one of the first things I would do is come in and go, I'm here to help. Right. So the first thing I wanted to do is just always be like, I wasn't yelling, stop it, don't do it. I was here to go, my job in this moment is to bring the calm. Like, again, I really want to just frame, no child feels good smashing their brother in the head. Like they don't want to be doing that, right? It doesn't feel good, even though they might get that look on their face where you're thinking like, are you, you look like you're enjoying this, right? But I want to really just emphasize again, kids inherently are just beautiful souls, right? They don't want to hurt others. Their natural state is to want to be connected and to feel good. So when they are behaving in those ways, there's usually something else going on.
Do you ever feel like your energy's tanking, foggy, and tired all the time? Yeah, me too. Turns out that this could be low iron levels. Did you know 1 in 3 of us are iron deficient, and so many of the supplements out there are synthetic, they're harsh on your gut, and your body doesn't absorb them as well. What I love about Great Spirit is that their iron range is organic, it's made right here in Australia, and it's whole food based. So you're getting bioavailable minerals and nutrients. They've got thousands of happy customers, and honestly, the testimonials on their site are incredible. So if you want to check them out, you can head to greatspirit.com.au and use the code Keshia20 to get 20% off your first order. Enjoy the energy boost.
So if we look at it this way, our job when our kids are fighting is to get in there, bring as much calm as we can, and say something like, I'm here to help you both. I'm here to keep you safe, right? So we remove one child off the top of each other. We get in the middle of them. We use our body in whatever way we can to make sure that nobody's going to get hurt, right? Then what I would do, what I used to often do when my kids are fighting is once I said, I'm here to keep you both safe, I'll be like, I want to hear what's going on from both of you, because it looks like there's a lot of big feelings here. And so what I would do is I would always often try to turn to the one that was the most distressed first. And I'd be like, I really want to hear what's happening for you. And so I might turn to one of my kids and they'd be like, she took my thing and this is going on. And then inevitably what happens is the other child tries to jump in and go, that wasn't what happened. And it's in those moments where like, we're all going to get an opportunity to talk. I'm just here to help you both listen. So if I could turn towards the child that was most distressed, I might touch them if they allow me to. I'm just bringing my calm presence in that moment to hopefully allow them to talk about what felt hard. And again, I'm staying connected to the other child saying, you are going to have a turn to talk in a minute. I know this feels big as well. But what we're doing in that moment, and the key thing is we're bringing our calm to help diffuse the energy from being up here to allowing it to calm down. So the one child who's upset, distraught, they're talking about they took this thing and really I would just validate, that sounds really hard. They took your toy. Yes, I can understand that doesn't feel fair. I get it. What else? You're just validating what they're feeling. And then hopefully they've finished speaking. Then you turn to your other child and go, I would love to hear how it was for you now. And then they talk. And again, we're doing the same thing. Honey, you will have another chance to talk in a minute, but I'm listening to Charlie for the moment, right? And we listen to how that felt. Now, hopefully by the time that they've both had a chance to speak, their energy has lowered a bit. So our nervous system has calmed down a little bit. And then what I would often do is I'd sit there and go, so sounds like there was a lot of things going on. I would kind of just say what I saw there. What are we going to do about this? And I'd actually hand it back to them to go, what is the solution here? Now, sometimes they would be stubborn and they'd be like, there is nothing and I hate her. And, and I'd be like, yep, you still got a lot of feelings. I get it. You're allowed to feel annoyed about that. Do you think we can come up with a solution? And sometimes I would come up with crazy solutions that sometimes would make them laugh. Sometimes we would come up with a solution that they would be okay with. Sometimes we couldn't come up with a solution. And then I'd say, I think what we both need to do is step away because we can't come up with a solution now that's going to meet our needs. So I'm going to put that toy away, or we're actually going to pause doing that for the moment. And then my job in that moment was to try and bring connection to them both in whatever way we could. Now, then also, after we've done that, when it felt right, I would always make sure there would be repair. How are we going to repair with each other? And that became a language that we would use in the family because, I didn't love saying you need to say sorry because I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, they're like, you need to say sorry to your brother. I'd be like, sorry. I would be like, I'm not actually sorry, but I'm going to say it to appease the adults, but I'm not sorry, right? Mm-hmm. We want repair to be genuine because we actually want to foster these caring relationships with your kids. And so we would have conversations like, I really, what would you like to do to repair when you're ready? And so that I wouldn't force them to do it in the moment, but I would make sure that they had repaired. So I'd always check back in maybe an hour later, maybe a few hours later. And sometimes the repair they'd draw a picture for their siblings. Sometimes they'd go up and give them a hug. Sometimes they'd say sorry. Sometimes they needed to wait a bit longer in order to apologize because they still had a lot more feelings there that they needed to come out. And I guess the job of the adult in the moment, and this is why it's tricky, this takes time. Because, if you're trying to make dinner or you've got to get to basketball practice and that kind of stuff, this being there, present, listening, helping them unpack what it is, it's going to take time. And that's not always, we don't always have that.
And also just taking the woman with 5 children, for example, generally while you're trying to repair that situation, then another fight starts with other children that also requires your attention. So it's like, some mornings in my household are so harmonious, and then some mornings there is at least one child. There's like an ongoing drone of whine or crying or frustration that it doesn't end. It just swaps from child to child, and it's just like this musical tone of the morning. Yes. There are some complicated. I was about to say that, like, when you say, it looks like, we just need to put this toy away. Like, often I've come up to these situations with, like, the toy's the problem. It's going up in the cupboard. We're leaving it there. Like, there's very limited time for the rest of the words.
Yeah, but the extra bits.
Yeah.
I think the thing, like, you make a beautiful point. It's, 5 kids is a lot of kids, right? And there's a lot of needs there. And, I come back to this place of, ideally, again, when kids are feeling pretty imbalanced, they, they don't necessarily take it out as much on their siblings. Now, but your kids are still little, right? So they're still learning all this stuff. Like as they get older, it will be easier and they will develop hopefully words and language to talk about it. Because the whole goal of this is to raise really great democratic problem solvers. The goal of sibling fighting, how we handle it, conversations, is to give them skills and tools to know how to navigate conflict so that when conflict happens, we don't just punch someone or we don't just tell them they're an idiot. We are able to go, oh, this is interesting. What's going on for me? What's happening for you? How do we all get our needs met here? I mean, we are doing lots and lots and lots of groundwork around developing this emotional intelligence for children. And sibling conflict is one of the most powerful ways that we can do it. It's not easy though. And there's going to be days where you just say, oh my God, it's nonstop. And on those days we're looking at, I would ideally kind of zoom back and look at my kids and go, what is actually needed here? Do we need to all go outside and put our feet on the earth? Does everybody need a really early night? Do we actually need to just have a little bit more fun? Like what is happening here? Where am I in this situation? Am I just burnt out and am I feeling exhausted and they're just responding to me? So sometimes we need to really pull back and go, what's actually happening here? I find that, I only had 3 children, but they would often take in turns of working through something big. So sometimes one child would just need a lot more attention and energy because there was something really big that they were working through. And then when that kind of felt a bit more resolved, then the other child would come. And that's what made me just think, oh my God, this job is never ending. And then what I began to realize is, whoa, I need to be super, super spacious and resourced to be able to do this, which means I need self-care. And if I do not get my needs met, I'm not going to be the calm referee in this moment. I'm just going to yell and scream at them and tell them I don't care, right? And we don't want to do that. So that is why I think parents, the work is always coming back to taking care of our needs so we can be that calm referee in that moment to be like, whoa, something's going on. I'm here to help. Let's see what's happening. Now that's really hard to do when we're sleep deprived, when we haven't had time for ourselves, when we're really stretched. It's tricky. And so what do? We resort to yelling and then we make them wrong. And that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. I know parents don't want to do that. So for me, it often comes back to, again, how do we meet our own needs so that we can be that calm center point, to be that guide and to show them how to navigate it.
How do we meet our needs? Well, because that's huge. I mean, but what I wanted to maybe speak to is punishment versus discipline, because in some of those scenarios where I would love to get down on everyone's level and I'd love to also step into children's needs not being met and what that looks like. But sometimes I can't manage getting down on everyone's level. And I would imagine that women, even not with so many children in their households, would get to the same point just with having jobs and all the multiple activities that need to be going to and getting from, and birthday parties, and the laundry list goes on. So when it comes to those situations where, okay, I can't get down on your level, I am just going to take this, like whatever the issue is, away or separate you from each other because we just need to keep the flow of energy moving. When it comes to perhaps discipline versus punishment on those occasions, can we dissect that?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, I mean, discipline really is meant to be about to teach. It's not to make someone feel bad. And I think the thing that I would often talk about when we talk about punishments and rewards, that kind of stuff, is we have become a culture that has so internalized, in order to make someone do better, you must make them feel worse first. So punishments are really about, I'm going to make you feel bad. So I'm either going to shame you or take something away to teach you a lesson. Now, it may teach them a lesson and it may get the result that you want. But actually what comes with that often is a big dose of shame, because often what comes with punishment is a feeling or a story of, you are bad, you've done something wrong. And so I'm going to take this thing away from you. And usually it's, I'm going to take my love away from you. and then you can have my love again when you're good. So what often happens with punishments is it can be very much become about I have to behave in a certain way in order to be loved, which is not what we want, because really that often can set up an imprint in a child that says, I'm only lovable when I'm good or when people approve of me. And we know that that then ties into this story of enoughness. We then grow up to be adults where we only think we're only worthy if we make enough money or we look a certain way, or, that people approve of us, or all those kind of things. So we know that that's a huge thing that can spiral on from punishments. And again, a lot of us grew up with punishments. So I think the thing is, again, I love to unpack punishments a little bit, and I invite everybody to, tune into what feels right for you, right? Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that that's the truth, right? I think it's really important for us to be discerning about what feels right for us. But I think what I see with punishments is what it does is it allows us as the adult to move into power over, which then basically is like, I'm gonna decide whether you're lovable or whether you're not. And I think what we want to come back to is, I think when we use punishments, we're missing the why behind why the child did what they did. There's always a reason for behavior. So if a child hits another child, well, what are we looking at? Does the child feel really powerless? Have they, is there a whole lot of feelings that are going on for them? Like, again, I come back to this. I don't really believe there's any such thing as a bad child. It's just a child that's often got a whole lot of feelings going on board, or is really powerless, or hasn't had their needs met in the way they need. And so they're behaving in the way that they've been shown, or the best that they can, in order to get their needs met in the way that they want. So when we come back to punishments, I think that when we move into punishing a child for doing something, we're missing the reason, the biggest question, which is, why were they doing what they were doing in the first place? Because what a punishment will do is it might stop the behavior, but it doesn't address the why behind it. And so then that means that why is going to pop up again and again and again. Now, the other thing that I often see is when we use a lot of punishments, it can take a massive hit to children's self-esteem. Because when we send a child to their room because they're being naughty and we're yelling at them, and we might use shame to tell them that that's not okay and you're naughty and all that kind of stuff, and the child goes to their room, but often what's happening is the child sitting in their room thinking, not I've done something wrong, but I am wrong. And then that is where the self-esteem stuff happens. Like, that's when children start beating themselves up, right? Even if we don't smack a kid, that's where they're going to start smacking themselves, metaphorically, right? They're hitting themselves with a stick going, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm not lovable. And again, we know that that's a big thing to undo. That's why I don't think I'll ever be out of a job, because that's what most adults have as a narrative within them, right? Is this, I'm shit, I'm not good enough, I'm no good, people need to approve of me, all that kind of stuff. And my work is so much about, you actually are enough, you were born enough. It's just society and our upbringing that often tells us that we're not. And it's learning how to re-love ourselves. And so that's where I think the punishment conversation is a bigger one. Now, does that mean that we don't take stuff away? Sometimes we go, I'm going to remove this and put it up on the shelf because we can't seem to all work together around this. I don't see that as a punishment. A punishment for me is, you're not doing what I want you to do, so I'm going to make you suffer, or I'm going to make you feel bad about what's happening. Sometimes a boundary looks like, actually, I'm not willing for you guys to do this, so I'm going to move this away. Or sometimes that boundary is like, I've asked you actually not to be climbing on that wall, mate, and you're not listening to me, so I'm going to grab you and we're actually going to go inside now. There's a way that we actually do it. We can set a boundary with an open heart, with calmness, with very clear what we're doing. And that is very different to a punishment, which is, I'm either taking something away from you and making you feel bad, or I'm going to shame you for doing what you're doing because you're not listening. So I think, and we know the difference between what it feels like when we resort to those threats. If you don't do this, we're not going here. Or if you don't do that, then there's going to be no ice cream. It's usually if you don't, then this is going to happen, right?
I've definitely used the no ice cream one before, 100%.
Yeah.
I've totally used that one. Like, if we can't get along this morning, like, we will not be getting ice cream. That ice cream I promised you this afternoon, it's off the table.
So, look, again, I just want to say sometimes we have to, because we're like, I haven't got capacity. It's been really stressful. Like, sometimes that's what we do, right? I just definitely don't want anybody to feel shame that as a parent, because I've done that before. I'm like, do you guys want chocolate frogs? Awesome. Then let's do this. Like, there's times and places when you do, because you just don't have capacity and you're just like, I just need all of you humans to move in the one direction and this is how we're doing it. So I get it, right? I think we have to be kind to ourselves. But if we're using punishments every day as a way to get our kids to do stuff, then I think that's when we need to kind of lean in a little bit and go, what else could be done here within it? And this conversation is it's a big one. And I think sometimes we need some support around it because we also bring in our own upbringings of how we were treated, how we were raised. Again, we've grown up in this behaviorism paradigm, which is deeply embedded in most of us as adults. That's like, you must be good. When you're good, you're rewarded. When you're bad, I take something away. And the message we actually want to give children is all of you is lovable. Now, that behavior is actually probably not appropriate, and I'm here to help you learn what is appropriate. And I'm also here to set a boundary when you're doing something that's not okay. It's not okay to pick up that tan bark and throw it in another person's face. I'm not willing for you to do that. I'm going to help you, and we're going to move away from doing that, right? So our job is there to be the guide, to be the helper, to set the boundary, to help them see what is okay and what is not. But it's the way that we do it, I think, that is really, really important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Can I use an example? Recently, my 10-year-old, who has actually, I'm probably going to use her a lot in this because I'm going to use you as my own personal therapy session. But she has been going through like some big feelings in the Steiner community. It's like crossing the Rubicon crossing. And she's like, there's a lot of anger and frustration when things aren't falling into place for her. I mean, and there's she's been having some really big feelings around loneliness too, which I'm struggling with because I'm like, mate, you are surrounded by people all the time. I don't know how, but she is going through that as well. But she was in a mood, not so long ago where she was out to make everyone feel as miserable as she felt. And I strongly invited her to go and take that mood into her bedroom and do some drawing or just be away from everyone because she was getting triggered by things that just wouldn't trigger her usually, and anything anyone said was like a vicious attack on her, or anyone that did anything or moved in a certain way or brushed past too close was like interpreted as a very specific attack on her. So I was like, dude, just take the mood into your bedroom, please go and just like have some time away from everyone. You're the only one here with your own bedroom, so use it. And she kept fighting back on that, and I figured that she probably just did need a hard boundary so she could have a little attack and get it out. So then I was like, no, now you actually have to go to your room. I'm making you go to your room. And she went in there and like hit a pillow and punched the wall a few times, slammed a door a couple of times. And I think she felt great after that. A little while later she came out and like it was a little bit more regulated. But I figured that, I don't know, then I'll hear someone talk and be like, sending your child to their room is really bad and you don't want to shame them. And it's like, oh, shit, I did that the other day. Damn it. So I guess it's like the intention around it and how it's done. Is that?
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah. So I think that example.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say that example is a great example. And the first question I would ask you is when she's like stomping around the house and she's got all these big feelings, like, what is it, if you were to tune into her in that moment, what is it that you think she really needs? What is she trying to do? Because children will make us feel how they feel.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah.
My husband does that sometimes too, actually, not just children.
Mm-hmm.
If I tune in to what she needs, to be honest, it feels like she needs to like release the pressure valve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So she's looking for any way to go, I have to get out what's stirring in my body. And I think it's really important for us to remember that anger can be, like there's a few different reasons we get angry, but anger can be such a mask for those deeper feelings that are sitting underneath. It actually feels empowering for us to be angry, whereas feeling the sadness feels very vulnerable. So we're far more comfortable being angry and projecting that onto everyone else than we are feeling the hurt. So especially if she's been saying she's been feeling lonely, or she's not feeling like she belongs or she's included, they're painful, hurtful feelings, but we often don't want to feel them. So it's easier for me to be angry and pissed off at everyone else, and I'm going to project that onto them, right? That's a really clever thing that we do as humans, to be like, I don't want to feel this pain. So what I'll do is I'll make it everyone else's problem, and I get to be right, and I get to make everyone else wrong. And there's some power in that. So it makes sense. So when we're seeing your 10-year-old, huff and puff around the house and all that kind of stuff, again, if we were to look behind her behavior, what does she want? She's trying to make you feel how she feels, which is angry, powerless, all of those kind of things. And what she needed, and it's where you got to, is she needs a boundary to push up against to get upset. So the only other thing I would have done different is I would have gone into the room with her. And I would have it's almost like I would have challenged her and gone, you're mad, aren't you, babe? Yes. Come on, punch up into this pillow. What else? Like, I would have invited her to express her rage in a way, but bring the safety of me to say, I see you. I'm not turning away from you. I'm here with you. And this feels big, doesn't it? And ideally what we would want in that moment is for her to get angry, to let it out, and then hopefully have a cry, because the cry is the healing in there. So, I think as coming back to what you're saying, the intention's really important. And I love that you could see this is what needs to happen. Probably the only other step I would have done is still bring the connection and the acceptance to her, to be like, this is hard, babes. I see it. It's actually also not okay for you to spread that energy around the house. And that's the biggest thing is, like our kids do this, our partners do it. It's like everyone knows in my house when my husband's angry, because he just like starts angry cleaning stuff and huffing and puffing.
Well, that's my thing. That's my thing too.
Yeah. And my kids are like, oh. And so, I used to walk around on eggshells a bit, but now, like many years ago, I went to him and I was like, you are allowed to be angry, but you are not allowed to spray that everywhere. That's not cool, man, because you are taking up a whole lot of space. And actually, what's behind your anger, you need, to be a responsible human, you need to feel into that. So, let's talk about it, or I'm going to leave you to it, but I'm not going to carry that bit. And that was that was a really learned behavior from him. And, that's like most people do that. And so it was a really great conversation to have, to be like, hey, it's okay to be upset. It is so okay to be upset. And it's also okay to be angry, but we need to be responsible for our energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what can you do with that? And that's the beautiful thing we can do with kids. You can be mad, take it outside to the trees, go run, go snap sticks, put on loud music and dance and shake your body, rip up paper. Like, you can have that. I'll be with you. Let's do it together. But it is not okay to just then spread that over everybody else.
I like that. I feel like I need to embody that a little bit more. Definitely in my household, because it is so easy to, like, there's a few things going on and then just to go into anger, and often it ends up with stomping, and she's 100% learned that from me, and probably Tucker as well.
Yeah. And I think again we have to have compassion for ourselves. Like we get angry, we're stressed, we're stretched, we're pulled in all the decisions. Anger is a normal emotion that we all feel, but part of being an intelligent, emotionally aware adult is to be able to clock it and go, I am angry and I need to go do this with it, and model what we do with our anger in a healthy way. Like, that's what we want to be showing our children. Anger is not bad, but how we express it and what we do with it is the important piece.
Yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this episode so far with Lael Stone. Next week, we will be going into attachment styles, having a look at when to introduce big themes to children and what is age appropriate in regards to sex and intimacy, and also death. Lael brings so much nuance to the space, but also made these topics a lot easier to talk about, more so than I was anticipating. So a big thank you to Lael for coming on and spending so much time with me, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks for joining me today. If this ignited a flame for you, please share, follow the show, and leave a review. The more support and subscriptions the show gets, the more powerful and credentialed guests I can bring on to deepen these conversations. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next week.